Good evening and welcome to Business at Prime. Well, the World Bank has projected that Sub-Saharan Africa is set to emerge from the 2020 recession with growth expected to expand by 3.3% in 2021. This is 1 percentage point higher than the previous forecast from the same Pulse report in April earlier this year. According to the World Bank, economies of Nigeria, Angola and South Africa have done very well to return to economic activity as high commodity prices held these resource-rich nations in a good stead. Joining us is World Bank lead economist for Africa region, Cesar Calderon. Cesar, thank you very much for joining us. Let's talk about the overall findings. The projections for economic growth are good, and 1 percentage point, is better than the April Pulse forecast. Why?
Well, thank you so much for your invitation. First, the good news is that, indeed, as you just said, the region is emerging from the first recession that they experienced in 25 years, and that growth in 2021 is set to expand by 3.3%. What are the reasons behind that expansion? It's basically a recovery in global trade that is being fueled by high commodity prices that have increased and remain above pre-pandemic levels, and also due to the relaxation of some COVID-related containment measures. However, the good news need to be qualified. In what sense? In the sense that the rebound that we're observing currently in Sub-Saharan Africa is not only weaker and timid compared to the growth in advanced economies and emerging markets, leading to some sort of like a dual track recovery. Why is it weaker? Why is it timid? One, it's weaker to the extent that the rebound in consumption and investment hasn't been high, and the progress that was observed during the first half of the year is going to be subdued due to the outbreak of the Delta variant of the coronavirus. And the second factor why that growth recovery remains weak is because the region is still exposed to outbreaks of the coronavirus and to the emergence of new variants. Why? Because the rates of vaccination overall in the region, in most countries in the region, is still very low.
Cesar, besides those reasons, climate change and the vaccine rollout are actually two other reasons that you have noted that are impeding growth on the continent. Tell us about those two, particularly the vaccine rollout and the hesitancy that we've seen.
Well, in terms of the vaccine rollout, we already have observed, if you look at incoming data in African economies on a quarterly basis, we already have seen a deceleration of this recovery during the third quarter of the year. And that's because of not only the outbreak of the Delta variant, but also the containment measures that are necessary, but that have disrupted economic activity. We're talking about, for instance, during the third quarter of 2021, nearly 20% of the countries in the region were either in a nationally or in a targeted lockdown or elevated their restrictions. And most of these countries, which are located in East and Southern Africa, represented almost 2/5 of the GDP of Sub-Saharan Africa. What explains this slow vaccine rollout? Well, there are three things, to be honest. There are three factors that one can think about. One is the vaccine inequity across the world. The fact that African countries have, by end of September, African countries have managed to fully vaccinate around 4% of their population, whereas advanced countries are discussing not only a booster, but have fully vaccinated more than 50% of the population, and in some cases more than 60% of the population. That's one factor that's bringing the slow vaccination rates in Southern Africa. The second factor is the fact that vaccines are arriving, and there are some logistic issues that impede governments to have a more rapid and more successful rollout of the campaign. And the third factor that you're mentioning, and that's very important, is hesitance. there's a lot of hesitancy in Africa, in some countries in Africa. I mean, if we look at Afrobarometer, for instance, they show that for a sample of 13 countries in the region, only 43% of the population are somewhat likely or likely to take a vaccine. There are several ways how vaccine hesitancy can be reduced. And this is where the communication, mass communication and community engagement are critical in order to increase not only vaccine knowledge, but also vaccine awareness in the region.
Cesar, thank you very much for your time there. Cesar Calderon, the lead economist at the World Bank, talking to us about the Pulse report, which has projected that Africa is going to emerge from the recession seen in 2020. Before